Real estate people love to argue this point. Is it better to buy or better to build? Should you buy an existing apartment complex or should you build one from scratch? And this is something that I've been doing for 30 years in the industry. And so I've had this conversation a lot. And I'll give you two examples from deals that I've done. First of all, let's talk about the Central Park asset that I sold in 2022 for $63 million. This was a 180 unit apartment complex. It was really well located by the freeway. We started building it in 2019. We completed it in 21 and we sold it in 22. Now, we built the property with the idea that we were going to hold it long term, but we had a buyer come to us and offered us $63 million for the property. It was a nationally traded REIT. Their cash was good. And we looked around and we thought, you know what, we can operate this and we can continue to receive returns on it, or we can sell it and we can build another one. Now, if we wind back a little bit into Central Park, we built that property for about $41 million. We had some carrying costs and a few things like that. But at the end of the day, we were into that property for about 45. Somebody was willing to pay us $63 million for it. They were going to get a 6% cash on cash return almost day one with that property. And we could have held it and we could have done that. We also looked at what would it take to go down the road, buy another 15-acre parcel and repeat the process all over again. And so we began to explore that. Before we ever signed anything, we knew that we needed to make some assumptions. We need to look at this other deal and see what we were going to do, whether we were even in the market to sell. And so we went and looked at the other piece of property. We could buy that for about $4 million for the land. On the Central Park property, we paid less than $1 million for that property, so we were paying substantially more. We were going to be able to build 191 units and 9 single-family homes on that larger property. We were going to be able to build larger unit sizes. We were going to be able to build some townhome product. We were going to be able to get higher rents, but we were also going to incur higher costs because at the end of the day, our cost was going to be about $60 million all in on what we now call the Wesley. And we decided that that was worth it for us to do. And so we did that. But let's go back and let's get into the numbers on what the raw numbers are. If you start from zero, how you can have totally different outcomes with the same budget. So here's the buy option. We could have been the buyers on our property. We could have kept the property at $63 million and we could have enjoyed a revenue stream on that. And we could have had the rent bumps that the other company now has. We could have continued to improve the property. We could have enjoyed our depreciation and it was very livable. It was brand new, so we would have had no upgrades to it. We would have just simply been operating and maintaining that property. So the question was, were we willing to pay $63 million for this property, or were we going to find ourselves better off if we went and started all over from scratch? We had to underwrite the deal based on what it would look like if we paid $63 million. And we found that we would be getting about a 5.25% cash on cash return year one. We would have some great rent bumps as the market continued to grow. And we would have found ourselves today at about an 8% cash on cash. We would be looking at doing a refi probably next year and pulling a pretty good portion, about 60% of our initial investment out of the property at that time. See, we would have been getting good rents. We were getting between $1,200 and $1,600 for the units that were in play on Central Park. We would have had a really good mortgage at about 3.5%, and we would have had to put about 20% down to keep the property, and it would have cash flowed from the beginning. But we looked at how do we grow our money faster, and that is where we came up with the scenario that we needed to do something different because a 6% cash on cash average return over the next 5 years wasn't really what we wanted. So we decided that it was time to sell Central Park and move on and start the Wesley. But what we weren't considering was what would happen when we started the Wesley. The Wesley was going to be in a position where we weren't going to be cash flowing. We obviously today are going to be seeing a 5.5% interest rate instead of a 3.5% interest rate. And we were going to have another 3 years between cash flow, between the sale and us actually getting to cash flow with the new property. This was what we had to account for. So when we looked at it, we could see that by building the new property, we were going to be about $60 million. We were going to have some periods of time where we weren't receiving cash flow. Whereas if we'd have kept Central Park property, we would have had cash flow the whole time. So sometimes it's not an apples and oranges, but it is a better thing to do because we were able to really upgrade our value of our property. Because at the end of the day, we're closing in, we'll be done with the Wesley here very shortly. That property will probably be valued at about $87 million. And so with $60 million in costs, we are going to be able to generate another $20 million in profits for ourselves by building the property and creating the equity and the cash flow. Obviously, some of that comes from the time period where we were not receiving income. So we have to factor that in. But at the end of the day, we will, by building a new one, put ourselves in a position where we will have a higher net return for the same 5 years as if we would have continued to hold the old property and not built the new one. Our goal in the future is to be able to put ourselves in a position where we don't have to sell either property, where we can do a cash out refinance, bring in some additional investor capital, and create both at the same time. So we're able to keep the cash flowing property and build a new property that then is going to provide additional returns and additional equity. See, there's nothing that creates equity like the original value add. And what I mean by that is when you take the actual sticks and stones and put cash flow to it, there's a value that's created because you have $60 million in expenses that create a value of $85 million when the property is finished. That is the original value add. That's the value that everybody's chasing because real estate by and large doesn't necessarily just create value with cash flow. It creates value with increased equity, increased rents that create an increase in the actual value of the property. And the majority of the money that is made in real estate is not made with the cash flow. It's made with the purchase and the sale price differentials. So if you're buying for 60 and you're selling for 85, then you have made way more money than you're ever going to make on the cash flow alone. But you've got to have cash flow. Nobody wants to wait and only get a paycheck every 5 years. That's too long of a timeline. So getting this to where your portfolio is constantly having something being built while you've got something cash flowing, while you've got something getting ready for sale is really kind of an ideal scenario for your portfolio so that you're constantly upgrading your properties, you're constantly upgrading the values, and you're constantly harvesting that equity that you've built over the last 5 years. Because even if your numbers work perfectly, and even if you have great value that you're going to build into it, you still have the patience process where for the next 24 to 36 months, you're going to be in that construction cycle and the markets are going to change, but you're still going to follow that plan and you're still going to follow through on what you had and you're going to create that additional equity. Let's talk about some of the risks that are involved with building right now. Obviously, costs are at all-time highs. Interest rates are volatile, so we don't know where those are going to land. They could continue to go up. They could come down. Got supply chain issues, although those are very quickly coming a thing of the past. We're not seeing electrical panels take us 24 months to get anymore. We're able to get them in 3 to 4 months like we usually do. Permitting delays. The funny thing is as the market has slowed down and there are less people building, we're actually able to get permits faster than we were able to back in 2021 and that time frame. When you understand that everything happens in cycles, there's a build cycle, there's a cash flow cycle, and there's a sales cycle, you're just looking at the overall market versus your portfolio life cycle and seeing which one fits for you and which one's the better one to take advantage of right now. I guess what I'm saying is for me, it made sense to build versus buy, but not everybody has the skill set that I have and the background that I have. So in your case, it may be better to have bought. Drop your pick in the comments below. Would you have bought the new project that was complete and cash flowing for 63 million, or would you have gone all in at 60 million on a new project being built? And if you want us to break down more deals like this, be sure and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to know more about passive real estate and how you can participate in that, and if that's a great move for you, watch the video about passive real estate and what nobody tells you. Click on the screen here.